Yeah, it started recording. So, yep, let me go ahead and do my side. So, hello everyone, welcome to Cloud Data Driven User Group. And today we have David Boford Hannah. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I'll call you as David for easy
Yeah, David is
pronunciation.
fine.
Thank you, David. And we have David today who is talking about like 20 Power Query magic tips that every user should know. I'm so excited for this. So, welcome everyone. Um, So a few words about the data-driven community here. When you see it on the website, we have two different branches here, Future Data-Driven Summit, as well as a Cloud Data-Driven User Group. So for more information, simply check the community website. I will add the link at the in few minutes later. But here we have, like on the left side of the screen, you see the Future Data Driven Summit 2025, which we just completed in September. So we will move forward with our Cloud Data Driven User Group meetings here, right side the screen. So the second branch of the activity we run are these weekly meetings, Cloud Data Driven User Group, like we are having today. And you are more than welcome to contact any of our community board members here. Um, my name is Deepthi Goguri, and I am a database administrator and also a Microsoft Data Platform MVP. I'm thrilled to be the third co-admin of this user group, and I will be hosting this session today. So before moving forward, I would like to introduce Jean Joseph, who is the founder and also the secondary co-admin of this user group, and also the community. And Ronan, you'll see him on this call as well. He's the primary co-admin. So during this meeting today, please feel free to use the chat for any questions and discussions as well. And you are more than welcome to use the reactions. It doesn't interfere with the course of this meeting. And if you hear something which you like, please, or you can raise the hands as well, then feel free to do so. And again, one more time, I would like to welcome David. David is a senior advisor at Today, and he did more than 200 courses as a academic trainer, and also he's a certified Tabular Editor 3 trainer as well. So I will go ahead and give the control over to you, David, and you can share a little bit more about yourself.
Sounds good. Thank you. Let me just have the slides over here. All right. I'm excited to present this session on Power Query. So let's get started. So before, maybe you have heard this, that you just have a self-service solution. I have heard that and thought that to myself several times in a bad way, thinking that I have many other colleagues and know many others that are so proficient in writing SQL or Python or PySpark and could do very many cool things with pipelines. I'm just having a self-service solution with Power Query. So I would like to, with this session, try to empower myself, but also maybe you that sometimes think this yourself. So my name is David Hanna. I'm from Denmark, and I'm a senior advisor, and I'm passionate about guiding users in understanding Power BI, but also understanding for self-service developers to understand some of these more difficult enterprise concepts. And I would like to introduce some of these concepts in a very consumable and a practical way that will help this typically data analyst, business analyst, self-service developer. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer, certified Tabular Editor 3 trainer, and love everything about Power BI, Tabular Editor Fabric, and semantic modeling. So just to get a feeling on the audience, so if you can use a heart, how many prefer Power Query and Excel? Then click a heart instead of T-SQL, PySpark, or Python. There are some hearts. Thank you. I feel with you. And for those who prefer T-SQL, PySpark, or Python, or anything similar to any code language like that, most likely you'll get inspired on what your colleagues that are business analysts, self-service developers can do. And if you're a DBA like Deepti, okay, what performance issues could there be? Why are they doing all this weird stuff? Maybe you'll then get a feeling with the Power Query there as well. All right, so thank you for participating there. So during this session, I will go through 20 Power Query tips and tricks, and I will show Power Query in Power BI Desktop to begin with, but I'm also going to show how easy we can get into Fabric with Dataflows Gen 2 and what that will enable us as a Power BI developer with Power Query and the Fabric. So we're going to get started with some simply almost like medallion architecture. Most likely you heard about that before. And looking on how to create some surrogate keys, composite key merge, some error handling, and how to connect to Excel in a proper way, and some documentation. And then we're going to take that into Power Query in the Fabric, which is called Fabric Dataflows Gen 2. And then we're going to look for some snapshots, some query folding, and writing Power Query with T-SQL in a lakehouse. So a lot of stuff to cover. So we can just relax because we have Microsoft to assist us, right? So Microsoft will, of course, teach and learn us some best practices in how we should model our data. So inside Power BI Desktop, we have this Add Data to Your Report, Use Sample Data. So by clicking there, I should have a proper data model, right? Well, welcome to one big table. So thank you, Microsoft, for learning us best practices, right? So this is the old financial sample data. Maybe you have seen this before, but we're going to take this and star schema and take this all the way from Power Query and Desktop to Dataflows Gen 2. So hope you're ready and ready for the ride. So let me open Power BI. So this is Power BI Desktop. I will open Power Query. And here we have the wonderful one big table. And this one big table only have, well, 700 rows, but it's more that we would like to have dimensions and fact tables. So one thing we could start with, it's almost like with the medallion architecture, if you have heard that term before, with bronze, silver, gold. It's more like, well, it is a staging table. So this is what we get from the source, so to say. So I would like to make a reference. So I would like to create references to this staging table. So I will create my dimension tables from this. So I will rename this to date, and I can have another one reference, which will be my segments, and another reference here that will be my country, and another one that will then be my fact table, finance transactions. I'm using reference because using duplicate would just have duplicate. So if there should be any changes here, I should have those in the 5 queries there. So looking up here, we can have the query dependencies. So I can then see I have it's of course Excel from this sample data. I have this financials, but we can then see the query dependencies out to my dimension and fact tables. All right. I will then also disable load for this one because we're not going to need that. We're only going to need this as for staging to then insert data into the specific tables. So we can also right click, move to group and define a new group. So we can call this staging, raw, landing, or in what decade you are in, depends. So the same name for, or different names for the same concepts. And here I would like to add for my dimensions. So there's no performance benefits or anything with this grouping, but I do love to organize and have folders as much as possible, because then if we're going to add a new fact table, I know where I would like to put that fact table. That's going to be in the fact, because I don't prefer to have dim or D or fact or F in prefix of my tables. I would like it to represent the business, and they don't speak IT in the same way, even though it should be very important to understand star schema with facts and dimensions. All right, but right now it's only a reference. So we still have all the rows and all the columns. So we need to do something and remove some of the rows and columns. So there is a thing we need to be very careful about. So I could select all these different columns and begin to delete. And let's say right-clicking and say remove columns. This will have applied steps over in the remove columns. However, if I need to change something, I need to then do it by hand in the code, which is quite painful. So another way to remove or choose columns is not just clicking and right-clicking there and saying remove. We have this option on choosing columns. So choosing columns here, we get a UI with a list of all the columns, and I will then select only the needed columns. Here I have my 4 columns, but notice I have this gear icon. So whenever I have this gear icon, I can go back here on the UI to then quickly select any new or remove from the UI instead of the code. We could do that again also for the segments. So let's do that for segment, discount band, and products. And country should then only be, that's a very thin dimension, it's only 1 column. But of course, with a dimension, we need to only have unique values on the key column. And you can see we have all 700 rows here. So we need to click on this table icon and say remove duplicates. So now we only have 5 countries. I need to do the same here on my segments, doing all duplicates there, and also the dates. So here it's quite visible with removing duplicates. We only have the first day of the month, something like that. So thank you for that, Microsoft. We can add a proper date table later on. All right. So now we could easily load this into Power BI and create relationships between my fact and dim. However, creating a relationship on text is not a good practice, even though we easily could do it. And I see many do it, also with just like VLOOKUP in Excel. Here's the trick that we're going to add a surrogate key, or in this case, just an index column. So we can add an index that just represents that specific unique ID, where we can then say this will be my country key. And I'll do the same on my segments, adding a new index and call this segment key. But this column is not available in my fact table. So I'm not able to create a relationship in Power BI Desktop with that. So we need to merge the segment key onto the fact table. So we can go here up in the home on the finance transactions and say merge queries. Let's get rid of this one. So merging queries. And yes, it will be recorded. I know it's going fast with a lot of tips and tricks. So you'll get the recording while also doing it fast. So finance transactions, we can then go in and find my country to begin with. So that is then the country to country. That is the ID or the merge. And then we have the Apple airport icon, I call it. we can click here and expand to only have country key to then be added onto our fact table. And now we have a number representing our texts for our countries, which is stored more efficiently compared to the number of characters, but also if, well, maybe not the country name will change, but more if it was an employee name or product, it will be a much more robust for have a unique ID. And then we can remove this country because now we have the country key. Now we need to do the same on the segment. But there's a small barrier here because we need to have, well, the unique row here, or the key is actually 3 columns that make that row unique. So I could try to concatenate these 3 columns into 1 column to have that to do something, but that is, I should also do that on my finance transaction. So just by clicking Control, we can actually not just select 1 column, but we can actually select multiple columns. So I call this a composite key merge. So we can have like that concatenation in that order that will make it unique, and we will get the proper lookups. So again, the Apple Airport icon, only adding the segment key. And now we have a number representing the unique combinations of the segment, product, and discount band. And I can choose columns. So removing segment, product, discount bands. And we can also remove month number, month name, and year because we're going to utilize the date as the key to our dimension table. And now we have only numeric columns there as well. So this will be much more robust and better as well in terms of a robust solution. And we can create relationships again with these integer, which are best practice for semantic model development. All right. So then we will see that in Power Query, red text will break you. So with a thumbs up or anything, how many of you have seen this type of error message in Power Query before? That the column of the table wasn't found? Yes, there's a few. Yes, good. Then it's not just me that will have these errors. That's good. So let me try to show how we get this error. So there could be some changes in the schema or our source table or anything like that. So if I delete this discount band from my staging table, I will then see I will get an error on this segment table because if I go to error, remove the other columns, it is hard-coded here. And that's just the joy of Power Queries, that you need to go in here and then delete that manual, and then the query will work. And you need to do that also on the finance transactions because that also have that on my discount band. That is not that great. All right, so if you would like to have another option, I will just paste this back again to see this error message. So instead of doing this manual remove, we actually have another hidden M function missing field. So if I insert that missing field ignore, I will actually just give the table, even though there is an error or not being able to find this discount band. So missing field ignore in the table select columns. It will then ignore if there are a column that is referred to here but not found. However, if you have been building a Power BI report with some visuals using the discount band, you're going to have some weird numbers or some visuals. So another tip is, instead of using the ignore, you can use the missing field use null. And here you will get the column with the discount band, but it will just be null all the way to visualize, okay, something have changed, but we will still keep on the refresh, and you'll just have 0 or blank in that value for that column. However, I know many of you are SQL and it's really stressing the importance of a proper schema and schema changes. It's not just something you do. Well, for self-service developers, that's quite often. So this is just to give another option that you then can consider. But it could also be great just to give us a warning or an error if the schema changes, if something fails. Well, we need to check the pipelines or anything like that. Why is discount band missing? But here is just another option. All right. So that was the using null and ignore. And there are a lot of things with this change settings with auto detect column types for unstructured sources. And unstructured sources is not SQL. They have control on the data types and schema. Unstructured sources would be CSV files or Excel, for example. And we actually have, just next to the time intelligence. Is there a question? Oh, okay. Next to the time intelligence, auto date time for new files, which I have hoped you also have disabled, really a bad practice. Next to that, you have the type detection. As default, it is detect column types and headers for unstructured sources according to each file settings. So this will then often give us that change type 1, change type 2, change type 3, because we will try to assist in any way. Whereas if we turn this off, we will be in full control when we're going to add the data types or the change type to it. And it will be much better practice to try to locate all these change type into one step instead of, yeah, in this case, 4 different steps. Performance will be much better. All right. Another thing here, Template. Template is the tabular model definition language, which is an upgrade from the old TMSL. And I am really passionate about this template. So the template, we have the template view, and it's gone GA here in not that long ago. So yeah, and of course something went wrong with my visuals, I know. So in my table view, in my template view, we can actually create, just take the entire semantic model, and we can actually see the entire semantic model with table, columns, formats, and even the M partition here. So this is the partition. So this is the M Power Query. So we can actually see all this as part of one single document, which is it's just amazing. So this is just an extra backup. We then have the simple gallery, where we can actually find in the community, and I have tried to insert a few of my own as well, but we have a calendar table by Rui Romano, and we can then copy paste that template that will generate a generic calendar table. And that could also be done with calculation groups or model documentation or other cool things you will see what the community will share. So I have already pasted that into this one, and I can simply click preview. And here I have this cool compare diff. So this is my source, this is my target, and you can see all the green that I'm gonna add only a new table named calendar, and it's gonna have this long list of M applied steps. I will click apply, and now I have applied this template, and I have now just the schema of this table, but I can then click refresh now. So now I will also have data inside of this calendar table. So Timple can include Power Query, and it's so much cool to reuse and share this across semantic model and developers. And now we just have this, and you can see this was all the applied steps. And of course, this should be in my dimension tables. Great. So typical scripts, that's really great. All right. Then don't let Microsoft fool you, because many of my self-service developers love Excel, even though many will try to avoid Excel, but it just have 40th birthday, so it will take a while to avoid Excel. But there is a beautiful Excel connector in Power BI Desktop, and you think you will need to use that. But if you care about sharing that Excel data with others and make it easier to refresh and not having an on-premise gateway, we will need to use the web connector instead. And that is just a design went wrong. So opening up this beautiful budget Excel table here, this is located on OneDrive. So going into the file, going into info, if we connect with the Excel connector, it will take the local path. So it will look on my local PC. But if we go into the info and then click copy path here, not copy local path, we'll get the online part. So if I go back and click new source, not the first one, that would be too easy. So we need to click on the web and insert. And now we have a weird URL. And we need to then delete the question mark web equal to 1. And click OK. And that Excel is not in OneDrive, it's actually under the hood on a SharePoint. So a lot of confusing about all this. But let me insert that into my model here, and that's going to be my fact table. That is going to be my sales budget. And this is a beautiful, beautiful budget table, right? Yeah. So this first step I talked about, it will do the auto-detect change type of this column. But the first row is, well, not column 1, column 2. So using the first row as headers, it will then detect the change type again. And now we have change type 1 and change type. So I will, of course, delete this one because it doesn't make sense. Then, as in the classic Excel, there is a full year total for the year. I will get rid of that. Else we'll just have double up budget. I don't care about that. And then the magical function that you most likely have seen, but I just need to include it. It is the unpivot other columns that will take the column headers into one attribute, which will then be my date, and all the cell values will then be my budget. And then I can create a proper relationships to my product and my date dimension. All right, so we are in the year of 2025. The rise of AI is everywhere. We have Copilot everywhere. So there shouldn't be any problems when we work with dates. Right? Right? So there's some differences working with date. And also in Denmark versus US, should we say the month, day, year, or day, month, year? And is it Sunday or Monday? All these things. So if I then convert this into dates, I will get an error because my computer expects English, but the Excel speaks Danish. And apparently that is too difficult for the engine. So that's bad. I will delete this one. There's a hidden trick here. So going into the using locale, instead of just clicking dates, using locale, we can specify, dear Power Query, please look at this file and expect this locale. So data type, change to date. And you can see it expects locale English, but here I will say, please look in Danish, Denmark. And now it works as expected. And you would expect that it would work that from the start, but it is difficult. And also numbers with dot or comma in the numbers, 1,000 separations, that's also different from continents. So here you can see the locale DADK, that is the Danish. So that is really helpful. So yeah, don't use the Excel connector on pivots, and then the using locale. Structure your queries, I already showed you, but having this dim view branch, fact view budget, and no folders is not that helpful. And I have seen solutions with 20 fact tables and 100 dimension tables, just like this, without any folders or proper naming, and it was just terrible to try to help that. So having it into fact, dimension, metadata, organize, functions, parameters, staging, or data profiling, it is so much easier to get that organized and structured. So everything with folders, I just love. And we'll see later on when moving into Dataflows Gen 2, we have this modern UI. We'll even see that folders appearing other places. And documentation, right? So often in Power BI, you will often look for documenting the measures. But I would also stress that you can actually document tables as well. So documenting tables, it is very simple to do. That we can right-click the tables and set properties. And then we have this where we can say data source Excel, owner, John Doe, something like that. So that could be based on which source system, who owns it, or any other information that could be relevant on that specific table. You will, of course, see that information here. But if I then say close and apply, we will actually also see it many other places. So hovering over the sales budget, like any column or measure, you will also see that in the description field there, which is really helpful if you are live connecting to a semantic model that you haven't created yourself, giving it the all description as you can. And it's not just there. We can actually also see it in the temple. So you'll just have 3 backslash and the description for the temple. And if you have, and you should, use info.view DAX functions for auto-updated documentation, you'll also see it there in the info.view tables. And even if you go to One Lake Catalog in Fabric Online, you will see when discovering semantic models, you can see the properties for those tables there. So add it once and see it everywhere. And that is just super helpful to understand more about the tables. So there was some tips and tricks on the Power BI desktop side. And I can see dates to an analyst are like crosses to a vampire. That's a good one. I always prefer to work with actual databases versus spreadsheets. I don't think it's just you that prefer that, but there are so many out there still working in hardcore Excel, and moving to Power Query will be a huge step for them. But of course, having a proper database schema, all that will benefit many others, but you don't have time to help everyone. Yeah. All right. So it must be difficult to migrate from Power BI to Fabric, right? Thankfully not. So going into powerbi.com, which also could be fabric.com, I don't know, but let me just switch to the Fabric experience here. And now we have workspaces up here. I need to learn that. But we can then click on a new item, and I will create a Dataflow Gen 2. The Dataflow Gen 2 group, create. So there's always these naming conventions with Microsoft. So even though it's a Dataflow Gen 2, you can see here up in the top left corner, Power Query. All right, and then I will, where is it? Let me see. Let me just give that. All right, there. So this is the modern UI, which I wish would soon come to desktop. They have tried to announce it, but then roll back. But hopefully it will soon come to desktop. But what we actually can do is simply, if you have a Power Query solution in desktop, we can simply as copy paste these folders and go into Fabric and copy paste them. And then we have all the EM just copied into the cloud. And now we have migrated from desktop to Fabric. And what it does here is only takes the M, which is the unofficial language for the mashup or Power Query formal language. It will not take the credentials or connections, which we have set in the desktop. So it will send configure connection, but I'm going to have some issues there because it's looking on the local file part here. So I need a gateway to set that up. So I will go to another Dataflow where I have done the proper Excel to web instead. So everything is ready to use. And it is so much modern. There are this visual diagram to have that query dependency, which I like. And these folders you can see on top of these tables and this info icon, you will then see the table properties here. And you will have the icons as well over here to have more, whether it's query folding or not. All right, so let me add a new blank query here. So what I would like to investigate a bit here is sections, which is a red one here, which will actually give us a library of all the functions, but also the tables in my queries, because I would like to try to dynamically reference my tables to create what is called a table.profile. However, this section is apparently not working in the browser, which is really poor. So if I use this shared, we should see that the functions will be visible. So all the functions available in the M, most likely that will not be source. Okay, let's just go ahead. So what I would like to show you is that was the comma, of course. So it should load now. And waiting. Yeah, so here we have all the queries and here we have all the functions below. So the shared works, but not the sections, which is unfortunate. So if I go back again to Power BI Desktop and add my new query here, and then equal to sections, we will then get a record. And we can see here, I have all my tables as part of this call. And this is dynamically. So this would work for any of those tables you have in your Power Query solutions. So I can put that into a table and let me filter out the query one, so it not references itself. What I can then do here is I can actually add a new column. That will then be a custom column. So here, I will use the table.profile, which normally would just be for one table at a time. But because I have that dynamically reference on my tables, I can reference in the value. So this will add a new column where I will then get the column mean, max, average, count, null count, and distinct count for each of these tables. And I can use the AirPod Apple icon to then expand for all my tables in one go. So that is table.profile for all your tables in Power Query, which is super awesome if you're doing anything with data profiling, with monitor, mean, max, or average, or monitor or set some thresholds on null count or distinct count or anything like that. And that is just super cool. And I really hope that it will come soon to the Power BI service as well. But I have Marco Russo here, also wishing for there should be one M. So go inside here and upvote for the fixed sections in Power Query and Dataflows, so we can have more dynamically table references. And that was just for table.profile. You could think on many other ways that you could dynamically reference your tables. All right. So going back to Dataflows, we have this data profiling, which is then just for one specific table, because sometimes, okay, you only need that table.profile for a specific table. And I would like to have it for my financials. And what I then did is add just a custom column with the table name. And I also added a date for when it ran. Why did I do this? Because normally in Power Query and for Power BI self-service developers, you overwrite. You always overwrite. You will always replace. You'll not be able to create snapshots unless you're going to use something with Power Automate, which I have been doing before. But thankfully now, the weak parts in Power Query have always been the load part in the ETL. You should only be consuming it inside Power BI, but now we can add a data destination for the specific table output. So I can add a table destination or data destination, Lakehouse, Warehouse, SQL database, SharePoints. So I will select a Lakehouse. So this Lakehouse, I have plenty of Lakehouses, but let me just let me take this one. I should already have Data Pro. I will just create a new table. So the new table here, it will be named Data Profiling. And instead of using automatic settings, you can then see the replace is the default one. But look here, append data to the destination, preserving existing rows. So this is the game changer going from desktop to Dataflows Gen 2, as we can now create these append or snapshots. So whenever this data flow is scheduled to run, it will then take the data profile of that specific table along with the modified or snapshot date timestamp, and then append into a lakehouse, which more like looks like a SQL database, but then you have proper append, and you can then filter on table and snapshot time to have that. And that is just super cool. So that is possible here. Really, really cool. So just an example of a lakehouse where I have done this. It should be in this one. And let me see if it's within solutions and within data profile. I'll just check for this one and see if I also have one for error handling. That's another topic for another day. But table.profile, we should see the table.profiling for specific tables and with different snapshot times. So yeah, now I'm viewing a Delta Lake Parquet file here, and this is the table.profile, and I have it for the table here on budget, that specific date time, and then finance transactions, and if I go further down, I have a budget here as well on another day. So I can create that snapshot history, but be careful of not overdoing it because you can quickly have a lot of rows in that. All right. So talking a bit about performance, we have something called query folding. Query folding is when you can translate the M into SQL. But if you are connecting to Excel, you are already breaking the fold because you cannot translate M into a native query language that Excel have. So you need to be connecting to a SQL database or even OData, for example, in order to have a native query language that would then be SQL. So right now I'm connected to another database. That's the space part from Tableau Editor. That is a Asia SQL database. So if I then go into my SQL invoices, there are something about the icons. So over to the icons here, I'm simply just taking the source and just selected a view or table from that database. And I'm waiting for this icon to come forward in just a few seconds. But there should be a green Harry Potter lightning and a green database, which we also can see just over here, that this step will be evaluated by the data source, which means that it will be able to translate into SQL. So I can right click here and then view data source query. And this is SQL. Maybe not the best or beautiful SQL, but it's SQL. If I then go over here to my SQL customers, I did connect to a SQL database, but I wanted to check something. And apparently I did do something with kept bottom rows. And now you can see I have different icons. So the yellow one is one or more steps in your query are not supported. And the red one, this step, there are different icons now, but this step will be evaluated outside the data source. So right-clicking here, I'm not able to see the native query because it's not being able to translate that specific kept bottom rows. So really think on performance optimization if you have Power Query, even though they are connecting to SQL, having it into the M engine compared to having it as a native query in SQL, it's so much more performance heavy to do it in the M query. There's actually also a cool thing we can see here in the service as well, that we have this query plan. And this query plan will start from the right, where we will see that the start with remote, which is good because that means query folding. But here I see buffering and streaming. So as soon as I see buffering and streaming, I know that we need to take care of something in the Power Query engine, which will be more performance heavy. Buffering is the most heavy one because it needs to take all the data into memory, into the Power Query engine, because it needs to do a table.lastn. And in order to do that, it needs all the data. Streaming, however, is still not query folding, but it will be filters on the fly, and it does need to have all the data into memory. So for performance optimization, you can look on query plan and try to remove buffering and streaming. And if not possible, try to have buffering at the end as possible. And therefore, it's crucial to always filter your columns and rows as early as possible, because then you have as few columns and rows put into that slow engine of Power Query compared to a native query. All right. Speaking a bit about more SQL. And I know someone laughing about the format of that query language there, or how Power Query translated. I did tell you. So let me go into a lakehouse. A lakehouse is simply just a data lake plus a warehouse. That is a lakehouse, so we both have the option of storing it in raw files in JSON, CSV, but we also have tables. And in the tables, it is stored at the open source format as Delta tables in Parquet. So we can have different workloads in Fabric to connect to the same tables. Doesn't matter whether it's SQL, KQL, or analysis services. So inside here, I can then navigate to SQL Analytics endpoints. And in that SQL Analytics endpoints, I can then have a similar experience to what some may have seen in SQL Server Management Studio or something like that. We now see schemas, database objects. We have table, views, functions, stored procedures, security. Wonderful, right? So, of course, many of you would then click New SQL Query. But I don't feel like writing SQL, and especially not in front of you. So let me try something else. So we can have New Visual Query. You know where this is going, right? So New Visual Query, we can now have, let me take segments and take finance. And now look at this. Power Query is back now in almost the warehouse UI here. So what we can do here, let's say I would like to, let me do a group by. Let me just try to remove the row. That's the transform, group by. Let's just make group by, we take dates, count of rows, nice, revenue, sum of my sales. So I need to enable load for this one, because even though I can have multiple tables, the output always needs to be one specific table. And now I can see the view query or view SQL for that specific part. Again, maybe you're not happy about the formatting or how you are writing this, but I can now use inside SQL Analytics endpoints, the Power Query experience to then view the SQL, and I can even save it as a view, create view here. So sales back, and then we can click OK. And I will now have a view here, and all good, right? So this will force me to write SQL, because this is query folding all the way. But if I would like to break it, so open and pop up, we'll get the full Power Query experience inside the SQL Analytics endpoints. However, after doing this group by, let's say I would like to, not a good practice this one, but let's say I would like to sort the revenue by descending. And I would like to add a rank. So I would then add, in this case, the index I was using before. So after sorting it by descending revenue, then the index 1 is the number 1. That's the best date for this one, or it could be the best customer. However, this is not a good practice on adding the index like this, because now you can see this step will be evaluated outside the data source, because this is too difficult to be translated into SQL. So clicking save, and because we are on the SQL Analytics endpoints, we will get an error here because the query does not support query folding. So inside here, I am restricted to only use what can be query folded, whereas in Dataflows Gen 2 or Power Query in desktop, I can utilize everything and then suffer performance issues maybe, but without really realizing it. So you can see that Power Query is everywhere. Power Query is in Excel, in Power BI desktop, in Dataflows Gen 1, Dataflows Gen 2, and also now in visual queries in a SQL Analytics endpoint in a lakehouse. That's just crazy. All right, the last thing here, before I'm gonna end and have time for some questions, is that we can actually include an orchestration pipeline. So orchestration on Dataflows or Power Query have been a nightmare, and I've been using a lot of Power Automate and trying to really think on when should I refresh my semantic model based on when my data flow is done. So a pipeline is like Azure Data Factory, but now much more UI friendly and available for a Power BI self-service developer. So we can simply just invoke, I was just selecting data flow here, and then clicking on semantic model, clicking Teams, you could click Office. So here in the data flow, I will connect to a workspace and select the data flow. And then when that is successful on running, it will then trigger a semantic model refresh. And when that is successful, I will notify my CFO. But if it fails, I would like to have a Teams chat to myself in order to have our error message or something like that. So I can schedule this thing. So how often I would like to pay for that in Fabric capacity units, but we can then have that parent-child hierarchy and sequential orders or some error handling, which is also really nice for a self-service developer. All right. So that was the 20 Power Query tips and tricks going from desktop with this beautiful financial sample data into Dataflows Gen 2 and talking about SQL Analytics endpoint and query folding. So back to where I started, you just have a self-service solution. Well, I would say take that in the bin, right? Because we have been thinking on star schema, query folding, snapshots, error handling, orchestration pipelines, documentation, and we haven't even talked about user adoptions and solving business problems, which I think self-service developers are crazy good at. But we can build more robust and scalable self-service solutions with Power Query. So I hope you got inspired and want to try a few tricks. And if you have any questions, feel free to share them. And this session was recorded. And I also have a GitHub where I have slides and many scripts available there as well. And you can connect on LinkedIn as well, where I will happily help in your direction. Power Query everything.
Thank you so
Yes.
much, Davey.
Oh, you're welcome.
Love kudos out there. So many people loved this session.
Oh,
Of
that's
course,
great.
yeah. It's an insightful session for sure. And people are like, everyone will like very good engagement today. I love it.
Oh, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. And again, this is just an option. If you are proficient in writing SQL or PySpark or Python, it will be more beneficial if you do that. But there are so many out there that I still have Power BI introduction training, even though it is 10 years ago. So, but I still have those trainings. So there are still so many that needs going from Excel to Power Query. That would be a great help. If you have another questions or anything, you can try to rewrite it again, but I think I have tried to scan everything. I inserted the upvote for Power Query with the 1M with these sections there. Yeah. Any other questions?
I have a question, David. Do you have
Yeah, go ahead.
YouTube channel of yours?
I've been thinking about it, but no.
Okay.
I share a lot of content on LinkedIn, so I have a
Okay.
newsletter there, and I have several posts there as well. So let me
If you
just,
can
I'll
post
share my
the
LinkedIn. Yeah,
yes. So people can
I will
follow your
do.
newsletter. They can subscribe to your
Yes,
newsletter.
please do that. I would happily So I have, just my LinkedIn, my newsletter, and I also have my GitHub, where I have several tips and tricks there. Do it. Yes, I will. But I really love documentation as well, and how much it can be automated or just organized. And I also have a lot on DAX, and how DAX can, with storytelling, also can be quite fun. And then we have this Power Query. I also have on composite models, how to extend enterprise models with Excel, which is quite cool. But there are so many things to consider in both user personas in terms of validity and performance. Yeah.
Awesome.
All
Thank
right.
you so much for the great session. We love it. We love it. And I hope you will, submit the sessions for our upcoming Future Data Driven Summit. And also in the future, we hope you can submit the session for this user group as well. Thank you so much for the great session. Again, this session is going to be recorded and we will be posting on YouTube channel. So stay tuned and subscribe to our channel so that you'll get the notifications whenever we post the video out there. But yeah, if nobody has any questions, I think we can wrap up for today until we see you next week. Thank you so much once again, everyone.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to host you, David. Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day. Yeah. Bye. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.